Welcome to the Snap Audition Podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and leave a 5-star review.
And check out the Snap Audition platform at snapaudition.com.
All right, we're here with Elisa Janson Jones here in Colorado. You're on the western side of Colorado. I'm in the what we call the Front Range, which is, you're on the western side, right? And Lisa has done all kinds of things in her past and helping out music educators, and her latest project is called Music Teacher Guild, musicteacherguild.org. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I'm
Elisa.
happy to be here.
So I like to start out with asking people about their background on how they got into music, how they got into doing, what's your journey? Where did you grow up? How were you inspired to do what you're doing or started doing years ago?
That's a long story.
within a small amount of time. Yeah.
All right. Let's see. When did I start in music? Before I was born. My dad was a music teacher. And so by the time I was born, he was the band director at Snow College in central Utah. And so I got to be, by the time I was 7 or 8 years old, I'd be sitting next to him as he was doing clinics and judging for concert band festivals and choir festivals and stuff like that. Wow. So I have literally been entrenched in school music my entire life. So I did all the normal, stuff as a teenager. I was drum major of the high school marching band and all of that.
What did you play? When you
French horn was my main instrument, but my mother was a musical theater person, so I'd been doing musical theater and singing since I was about 3 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, so through high school I did vocal music as well as instrumental music. I even did percussion ensemble, which was super fun.
Yeah.
And then in college, of course, I just went into music education and studied extra and took extra classes so that I had my fingers under me on all the instruments, and I took private voice lessons and 3 semesters of private conducting lessons, and just really wanted to feel like I was as prepared as possible.
Yeah. Where did you go to school?
I got my bachelor's from Brigham Young University.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Utah. It's cool. And then now you're not too far from where you grew up, but so how long?
Not too far.
Yeah. So and then after college, did you go right into teaching and how long did you do that?
Yeah. So I actually, this is an important piece, is I put myself through college by working at a music store.
Wow.
So I really loved music retail. I got my business chops under me, I thought. And then when I got hired for my first teaching job out of college, I was hired to open a brand new school, which is so exciting because I got to do all of the instrument purchasing. I got to handle all of the recruitment for a new program. I got to design all of the marketing elements. I basically took it on as what it is, which is its own little business. Right. So I thought I was very prepared. You'd think, putting my way through college, working in business, and then having, grown up in the world of music education, and then taking all these extra classes from different colleges and all of these private lessons. And so it was a little surprising that when I got into the classroom itself, I felt unprepared, especially in what we call the professional skills of things, right? Like, I could clinic your band tomorrow and probably they'd do, great things. But it was all the business side of things that I didn't feel like I had a handle on. And so I realized if I was struggling with the professional skills and the personal skills associated with being a classroom music teacher, surely other people were struggling as well.
Yes.
So I did that for a few years. And then while my babies were little, I decided to open a private lesson studio and got into the one-on-one lessons, and did that for about a decade, focusing mainly on non-traditional students. So students with physical disabilities, emotional disabilities.
Wow.
I took retirees. I took homeschoolers. So the students that other people didn't want, or the students that other people weren't successful with,
Yeah.
would be sent to me, and I would take them on and teach them.
Wow. That's amazing. My wife is a speech pathologist, and I helped her start her own clinic. And of course, she's every kid she works with has some kind of developmental disorder. But so I know I've been around this world of, and I actually started a platform that was on my other business to do speech therapy online. So the whole idea of helping kids and people, adults, whoever, that are other people aren't equipped to help, it's really cool. I mean, I'm just thinking too, all the different things that are atypical in the human life that could affect playing an instrument, singing, experiencing music. It's crazy. So that's
Yeah,
awesome that
and
you were able to do
and it
that.
just, it requires adaptation on their part, but as a teacher, it really allowed me to build a robust toolbox where
Yeah.
I came up with different methodologies, or we call them instructional strategies or learning
Yeah.
activities, right? For a single topic. So,
Mm.
it wasn't just this is the one way to form a buzz on the trumpet. I had 5 ways to form a buzz on the trumpet, because one way didn't always work for every student. You need to have a vast
Uh-huh.
toolbox. And so that brings me to like the Music Teacher Guild bit with a
Right,
brief,
which is what you're doing now. Yeah.
I did end up going back for a master's degree. I decided that since I was not as strong in like I was great in the pedagogical side of things and the musical
Mhm.
side of things, but I needed more in the business side of things and the professional skills. So I went back to school for an MBA and ended
Oh
up
wow, that's
graduating with my, yeah, I know,
MBA.
kind of.
That's so when you say professionals, so all my family was teachers. My dad was a high school AP, and mom was a teacher. Sisters, so I've been around this education world my whole life. And so I can think of all the things they talk about. But what do you mean by? Give me examples of professional skills.
Sure. So
Mm.
it's things like scheduling, or uh, recruitment would fall under a professional
Okay.
skill. I look at it like, it's the same thing in music education and business, but we use two different terms for it. So in business, I would call it marketing. In music
Yes.
education, I call it recruitment and retention, right?
Right.
Or customer support, that would fall under retention. Stakeholder management is just public relations, right?
Yes. True.
We
Right.
have accounting, you have budget management, like that. It's literally the same things in business and in our professional skills portion of our job as music teachers. We just call it different things. So I got really into like efficiency and strategy and branding and
Right.
marketing and creative marketing strategies and things like that. So um
So was
anyway, so
this
I
just? Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but
no, you're good.
you said that you were kind of like the music ed rock star person coming out of college, because I mean you had your father, you had all this experience, you had worked in the instrument rental repair, right, business. And what feeling, what made you feel that you weren't prepared to do that? What happened like the first year or two that was like, was it overwhelmed, was it, what was it?
I mean, that was part of it, but like just let's say systems management, right? So the
Okay.
technology piece of things. How do you send a mass email? How do you track assignments? How do you build a website? How do you just get notifications out to people? And there's the official channels, but then there's other
So
options.
you knew you needed that to happen, but
Yeah.
you didn't have this right now. You have this list in your mind about, I gotta do it this way. I had, step one, step two, step three. So you're saying you didn't have that in your mind, or in of knowing exactly what I needed to do to get
Well,
that
and it was
done.
like really clear to me
Yeah.
too, looking at my budget, like they had added and this is so embarrassing to say, honestly, especially now that, I run
Uh-huh.
multiple businesses. So, but 25 years of hindsight. But yeah, there was like like even just so silly, like getting along with the other teachers in my
Yeah,
school, and
yeah,
just
yeah.
the perceptions and perspectives, and being so annoyed when a family would pull their kid out of school to go on a week-long trip as a family, which 25 years later I'm like, yes, please take your child on that
Take them
family
out.
trip. the,
Yeah,
well, it's an important thing,
yeah.
but as a young music educator, I was so offended when a track meet would fall on top of, like,
Right.
one of our music things. And now, of course, my perspective is all about the student. It's all about the child and how do we support them. And it doesn't have to do with you or your ego as a music teacher. It has to do with what is truly best for the student. And I guarantee you,
Okay.
a week-long, trip in Europe with their family is more important than a band concert. Yes, I said it, but it
You
is,
said
okay?
it's on record now. You've said that a band. You're saying a band concert is. Can you go back 30 years and tell my band director in high school? No.
I mean, I get it. Like,
I
it's important
remember.
for your students to be there. We want them to feel like, it's
Yeah.
important, but they need to feel loved and secure and like they can trust you. And there's a whole, sorry, we're going like deep into the
No, this is
philosophy,
great. Yeah, it's
sure,
great.
but
Yeah.
um, what going back to your original question of like, how was I not prepared? So I was looking at my
Yeah.
budget sheet as a young music teacher. And of course, by this time I had already purchased all the instruments. I had figured out the ins and outs of district level purchasing and was able to
Yes.
come up with all of these great loopholes to get what I wanted from
Good.
who I wanted at the
Yeah.
price I wanted. So that is
Yeah.
a whole lecture for another time. But yeah, looking at my budget sheet and then realizing halfway through the year that they weren't giving me $7,000 for band t-shirts. That
Uh-huh.
that was in the budget. That wasn't the actual. Like this whole concept
Uh-huh.
of accounting from both ends, like we're not taught that.
It's complex. It
At least
is.
I
Yeah.
wasn't. And
Yeah.
so
Well, yeah. Well,
anyway,
yeah. During COVID, we sold my other software. I'll go back to that, but the software I created for doing online speech therapy became huge during COVID. People needed it. And so we had to learn, me and my business partner had to learn how to sell to all these school districts. And then so what we learned was the special ed departments that were buying it, they didn't really know how to buy stuff. I mean, some of them did, but we had to kind of learn. I was on the phone with my dad, like, how did you buy things in your school? Like, we were trying to, because we knew to get that sale done, we had to get them to buy it, and so we were guiding them, like, present it this way and do this, and I don't know, but it is really complex, and you could end up with not having the equipment you need, the first year you're a band director, and because you didn't fill out a form correctly, right?
well, and we aren't taught how to sell
Yeah.
our program to stakeholders. We there is this sense of, at least for me, I'm speaking totally for
Hmm.
myself. I had a strong sense of entitlement. This is what
Uh-huh.
I need for my program. This is what you should be giving me, and this is how it should go. And even though we might feel that way, we don't, like, it is a skill to be able to go into your principal and make a good strong case for why you need a larger budget, or why you need
Yeah.
that money for professional development for yourself, or why you need that new set of timpani for your students, right?
Yeah.
So, real quick story, I did end up getting my MBA. I started a business
Oh, right, MBA.
consultancy, which I still kind of have going, where I help mainly people in the music products industry and music tech ed space, as a consultant, just depending on
Yeah.
what they need. Um, but I also really love focusing on professional development, right? Like
Hmm.
that is what I care the most about, because I
Yeah.
want music teachers to be able to have those skills to do the things they need to do to make their program thrive and to make their career long, right? So,
Yes.
one of the
Yeah.
other skills that we aren't really focused on in university training all the time, again, not every program's the same, but is this idea of personal skills. So, how do we design a lifestyle
Uh,
that allows us to have the kinds of freedoms that we need in life the kind of self-efficacy that we want? How do we set those boundaries for ourselves?
Hmm.
What are the things that we need to do to set ourselves up for success and focus on personal development alongside our professional development? Because as an entrepreneur, we read voraciously about how are we efficient with our time? How are
Yes.
we efficient with our technology? How do we, design a lifestyle for longevity in a career that is incredibly demanding as an entrepreneur? And I
Mm.
feel like as music teachers, you are an entrepreneur. You're creating something that's solving a problem. You are running your own little mini business within the
Right.
school. And if you are, trained to only focus on what happens in the classroom and not outside of the classroom,
Uh-huh.
then you're going to run into issues like praxis shock, like feeling like your life is out of balance, like feeling that you're
Right.
giving, 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 and never able to renew yourself. You don't know how to set boundaries. You don't know how to select technology. You don't know how to do purchasing. You don't know, all of these things. So,
Right.
anyway, sorry, that was kind of a diatribe.
Dude, take a break. You don't need to be here. I mean, is there any way that we can get you home? But yeah, it's a lot. Were you in Utah or Colorado when you had your first job?
Utah.
You were in, okay. And what is it like there in terms of funding and for the school systems?
I mean, a lot of it just depends. But Utah is one of the lower ranked schools when it,
Is that
or,
true? Yeah.
funding.
Yeah.
So I, turned a lot toward fundraisers. I love talking about how to get funding without fundraising. So, for example, I wrote a book called The Music Booster
Yes.
Manual.
I saw that. Yeah, you've authored 4 books. I wrote them down here, but the one that really interested me was the fundraising booster club thing. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
because we're both entrepreneurs and we're always thinking about how do we fund things. But the reality is, you got it. That music programs take a lot of money, and
Yeah.
they're not going to give you enough from the school system usually.
I mean,
So
let's start with they should, right? I mean,
okay,
the school
yeah,
district should be fully funding music programs. They just should across the board. Now, if it's
okay,
something additional, like a band tour, for example, like that's not pedagogically essential, right?
yeah,
But if they want a marching band, they should be paying for
of
the
course,
marching band. If they want
yeah,
an orchestra that goes to Europe on tour, they should be paying for that. Like
yeah.
that's just my personal
So how do
philosophy.
you? Yeah, well, get into that. What do you said pedagogically important. So say you have a high school of, I'm trying to think of a good size, 1,000 students, medium size high school. What do you think are the if you're going to have a music program, orchestra, band, whatever, instrumental music, what are like the pedagogical essentials?
Um, do you mean like
Maybe no
purchasing
marching
wise?
band, but you're going to have
I
a
mean, because
concert band. You're going to have a concert band, maybe a jazz or something. What are those things that are like essential to creating a program that is good?
first of all, I think there should be as many options for music as there are for sports. So I don't
Okay.
think we should be stopping at band, orchestra, choir, jazz band,
Yeah, yeah.
stage choir, musical theater. You should be having the option of global music ensembles. You should have
Right.
a percussion ensemble. You should have a, e-music
Of course,
ensemble.
music
You-
production or yeah.
yeah, you should do music production. You should have a
Uh,
DJing class. You need to have like guitar and ukulele. I say need, but this is like wish list, right? So I don't think you should stop at band, orchestra, choir.
those are
There
just
should
traditional.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And in
Yeah.
fact, telling ourselves like, well, I am just a band teacher, or I am just an orchestra teacher, or well, I'm certified for K-12, because that gets me into the whole other way that we're unprepared, is that, I graduated college wanting to be a middle school band teacher, right?
Hmm.
And I was very fortunate to get a job being a middle school band and orchestra teacher. Now, fortunately,
Oh wow.
my orchestra training was wonderful. I'd been playing in orchestras
Oh.
forever, right?
Okay.
Even though I
Yeah.
wasn't a string player. Andy Dabchinsky, who is one of the authors of the String Explorer series, was one of my teachers in college. So I was very fortunate to feel extremely well-rounded in those realms. But if I had been offered to teach a guitar class, whole other story.
Yeah.
I am not a
Yeah.
guitarist. I
It's yeah.
ukulele, yes, guitar, not so much.
Yeah.
Or if they had asked me to teach a music production class. Nope, that was not something I was trained in. Now,
Yeah.
fortunately, I have been singing my whole life and took private lessons and did many choirs. And so, I started singing in church choirs when I was 12 years old or something. So
Right.
if they had asked me to teach choir, that would have been fine, but not everybody's that way,
No,
right?
of course not.
And
It's too
so
much to
so
learn. Yeah.
fast forward my life, right?
Yeah.
And in 2015, I had to go back in the class. I needed a steady income, right? And the only
2015.
job
Okay.
that came open for a music teacher in Grand Junction, Colorado, was at the private Catholic school,
Uh-huh.
teaching kindergarten through fourth grade.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And remember, what was my dream job? Middle school band. Okay, teaching kindergarten
Yeah.
through fourth grade is an entirely different skill set.
Yeah. 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 It's more about elementary school than music, maybe.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
different.
If you
Well,
go.
it's different classroom management. It's different, and each
Yes.
age group is slightly
Yeah.
different, and it's different activities, and it's a different curriculum map, and it's different types of assessments, and it's like a whole different
So
thing.
did you when you got into that you took the job? Did it remind you of starting right out of college where you felt inadequate?
Oh no, it was worse.
It
It
was
was worse. It
okay.
was so much worse. And
Yeah.
remember, I was a mother. Like I had kids who were kindergarten to fourth grade,
Yeah. You know
right?
how
Like
to get. Yeah.
I knew how to deal with them one on
Yeah.
one, but it was completely back to the drawing board. And I was so fortunate to, reach out to my own children's music teacher had just retired. And so I called him up, begged for a meeting, and I was like, "Hey, I just got this job teaching elementary. What can
Uh,
you tell me?" And he just like held my hand for those first 6 months or so, and just really, like I don't think I could have done it without him. And then the other thing that really helped me was my own podcast, the Music Ed Mentor podcast,
music ed
which,
mentor. Yeah.
yep, we haven't done
Yeah.
any episodes since I think the first of 2022, but there's a
It's still
hundred
out there.
episodes out
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
Yep, they're amazing, and I brought on some really amazing guests to literally to mentor me. Like it was great that other people listened. It was great that we had the thousands and thousands of listeners we did, but really it was very selfish that I was needing the mentorship myself,
Yeah.
and that's all of this understanding of first of all we're sometimes grossly unprepared for the job that is required of us. We're being tracked and forced in university to choose what our specialization is going to be, but then we may end up having to get a job that isn't in alignment with that specific, teaching path that we were forced into. I never
Especially in a
taught
like.
elementary school.
Yeah. I mean, you're living in Grand Junction, which is far from any. I mean, it's a decent sized town, but it's not that big, and there's only so many music education jobs in that
Yeah,
town. That
yeah.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we often have to take these jobs. So that's why I started the Music Teacher Guild, was to pull those people who can be amazing mentors, who if I were, an inexperienced middle school band teacher and my principal came in and said, "Hey, I've been, learning about music uh, uh, production or
Right.
electronic music or something like that, like we want you to add that class into your schedule and we want you to teach it." I would have someone to reach out to
Yeah.
through the Music Teacher Guild who is an expert in music production or electronic music or guitar or ukulele, or maybe I have to teach choir because I'm in a small town and I'm the music teacher. And so now I can reach out on the Music Teacher Guild and hire a mentor to help me. And I can set
Right.
up regular monthly meetings. I can do individual calls. The Music Teacher Guild is offering classes. Many of the mentors are offering small cohorts and small group coaching so that you can actually work with the same sort of small group of people throughout the school year to have that kind of support.
But so you have the website. People can go to the website. And what can they do now to just get into the community there?
They can browse the list of mentors, and the ones that are ready to be booked for mentorship calls, there's a booking link right on their page.
Okay.
They can browse the classes that we have that are being offered. There's usually 5 or 6 classes every single week, and they're on specific topics like an elementary data collection class or a middle school choir repertoire discussion
Oh,
group, or
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
so a variety of classes that the Guild mentors are offering. So they can sign up for classes right now. We're going to be offering some events soon, which are going to be longer workshop style classes. I can't say too much about that because
Are
it's
those
still
going
in
to be
development.
live, or is it going to
Oh
be like
yeah,
a
live
live event?
synchronous.
So like a
Yep.
webinar type thing, or is it?
Oh, don't use that W word. No,
Is
it's
it not?
not.
Is that the bad word now?
It's not. A webinar is
Yes.
information, and I'm
Right.
changing the model so
Okay.
that the first part of the workshop is the information, right? Let's take one of my skills that I love to teach about is funding without fundraising. Okay, so I'm
Yes,
going to say,
that's
all right, Eric. The first thing that we're going to talk
yeah.
about is I'm going to show you all of these options for passive income, for right, or starting a booster club, or building a e-commerce site that ends up being a drop ship site, right? Like all of these
Yeah,
ways that
that's
you can,
ambitious. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not. I could set you up one in 15 minutes,
If
seriously.
okay. Yeah.
So
Okay, go ahead.
all right, so I'm giving
Yeah.
you this information, right?
Okay.
And most webinars, most lectures, most of your
Mm.
sessions at music ed conferences stop there. They give you the information, right? And then you get your
That's
handout and
what
you
I
walk
was
out the
that's
door.
what I was going to ask you is what is that was my next question was going to be okay, you're a music band teacher. You go to the state whatever Colorado Music Educators, you go to continuing ed whatever. What is the difference between the two?
Right. So
Yeah.
you stop with the information generally.
Okay.
What we're going to do is take that next step. We're going to take 2 more steps. The next step is application, right? So I'm actually going to get you to apply these things. I'm going to get you to sketch out your booster club. I'm going to get you to design your e-commerce thing. I'm going to get you to look over this menu of passive fundraising and then say, okay, for my situation, I want to start this e-commerce site so that we
Uh-huh.
can generate some passive income based on selling merch that has our band logo on
Oh
it,
yeah,
for
that's a good idea.
example,
Yeah.
right? Or I want to set up this city market. City market's big in our area, right? They
The
do
grocery store.
lots of
Yeah.
donations, right?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
I'm going to set up a online auction where community members can donate items to the band, and we're going to sell them and take that profit, right? That's a passive income type stream. So you're going to
We
come up
we
with that.
call it passive in entrepreneurial world, but
Mhm.
what it means is you do the work at the beginning, and then over time, there's things happening that other people are doing or whatever the internet's doing. So
Yep.
it's passive in that sense, right? Yeah,
Right. I always think of when people
yeah,
ask me, well, what is passive income? Think of it like a
yeah.
book, right? It takes a lot of time and attention to write the book, but once the book is on sale, you don't have to do much. It just sells.
Well, like
Ideally, you have your own
the merch
marketing.
thing, yeah, the merch thing's interesting because that's an interesting idea because it's not just like, oh, we need to buy t-shirts. It's like, well, how do we build, this is my guess here, but maybe it's like, how do we build into our yearly thing to do this every year? And these are all the things we do. We update them, but they're always on sale on this website or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Instead
did it.
of,
I
yeah,
built it for our community band. People wanted to
yeah,
have Centennial Band merchandise. We wanted member t-shirts for people to wear at summer concerts. So I built us a e-commerce website, or I rather added it into the current WordPress site and
uh-huh.
set it up with a drop ship company. And now anybody can get on the website, buy Grand Junction Centennial Band merchandise, and it's shipped directly to their house,
And
and the
you're not
band
doing anything.
takes
Yeah.
out of that.
Yeah.
No.
You're not yeah, there's plenty of companies out there that are providing these services and
Yeah.
they're making a
So
profit and then they're giving you some of it. So
exactly. So that would
yeah,
be, a quote unquote passive. So anyway, back to my workshop idea. So I give you the
right.
information, and
Yeah.
then you're applying it in your own situation. And then the third step is evaluation, right? So now I'm going to come on and be like, okay, now that you've all designed your own sort of passive income funding, let's talk about it. Eric, why don't you share with me what
Huh.
you've come up with? Right? Or
Okay.
Sally, why don't you tell me what you've come up with? Or ask me your questions, or what is your plan? And so now I can actually see what it is that you're building, and I can give you that feedback and say, well,
Yeah.
you're right. I think e-commerce is a great way to go for you. I think in your situation, you're in Thornton, which is right outside of Denver. There's probably a lot of other people who are striving to get income from City Market, for example. So
Yeah.
you could differentiate yourself by instead setting up an Amazon affiliate,
Yeah.
right? Or set up through Smile at Amazon. Anyway, the point is, it's not just a lecture anymore. It shouldn't be, right? The good
Of
education
course.
happens when you
Yeah.
actually are applying it and when it's being evaluated. And by the end, you should have something to show for it. You should have something that you can put on your website and say, look at what I've done, right? This is what I've created. This is the skill
Right.
that I can demonstrate for you. So it's less about what do I know, and it's more about what can I do, because I think there's this big disconnect in music education between, well, I'm a pedagogue. I have all of this great information. I know all of this great stuff. But what
Right.
we need to see it as is a trade, right? We have a skill set. We have a toolbox. Doing
Mm.
auditions is a skill that you can learn. Creating that
Yeah.
pipeline of steps for your students to be able to follow so that
Mm.
they have a great audition experience, like
Right.
that is a skill that you develop. It's a muscle that you exercise. And I think if the Music Teacher Guild does nothing else but change this perspective of we are pedagogues and masters of information and amazing lecturers, to more of we are tradespeople who are constantly practicing our trade and developing our skills and our toolboxes and stuff like that, that's going to serve us in the long run in music education.
So when you say pedagogy, you're talking about the mentality that I go to university to be a teacher, to be a musician, play, and to convey that to people or to students. Are you talking about that part of it? Like, I'm here to teach you how to do music and how to perform? Or are
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
okay,
And
yeah,
but there's this whole other part of the job that if we do it well allows us to better facilitate the actual playing and teaching of music.
yes. I mean, and I think a lot of professions deal with this problem. My wife, to do speech therapy, she had to have a master's in it, and then she had to have like 400-hour practicum. But she learned how to do speech therapy from the practicum, where she went around the schools, clinics, do speech therapy. But the professors were mostly focused on research. They had great information, but they really couldn't teach her or anybody else how to be a speech therapist, because a lot of them had only done it a few years, or they were just tunnel focused on one thing.
Mhm.
But what I like about your approach is you're thinking more holistically about to have a great concert band, or to influence students to to love music and to be a good instrumentalist or vocalist. You might have to worry about fundraising, or you probably are going to need to know how to be friends with some of the teachers, or maybe not be friends, but at least get along, or all those little things that,
Don't
because
don't underestimate
yeah,
the power of being a great
yeah,
negotiator.
and that all these little things that,
Negotiation is
yeah.
a skill.
Well, and it's also like about not hating your job too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
I,
if
I
you,
mean, in my research for my
yeah,
doctorate, which I'm right in the middle of running my own study for my doctorate in
okay,
instructional
cool,
design, in a lot of my research, they call it praxis shock. It's where you get into a job and you're all of a sudden like, whoa, you're asking all these things of me, and I am not trained in the praxis of that particular thing, right?
okay,
And so that more than anything, some studies right now are showing 50% of music teachers leave the classroom in the first 3 years. Like 50%. What does that do to our student population? When we know that every time a music teacher leaves their job, especially if it's an elective, then their students also tend to leave because they're not just there for the music, they're there for the teacher. But
exactly. Well, and
anyway,
especially with sports, any extracurricular type thing,
mhm,
there's a
the
culture
coach
that's
leaves.
built. Yeah, there's a culture, and when a new person comes in, they have to rebuild the whole thing. So
Yeah,
not
yeah.
good.
But if
Yeah.
we can give teachers like that support network, like you never have to worry if you're unprepared for something because the Music Teacher Guild now has a body of mentors with all of these skills that you can
Yeah.
reach out to.
I like to get into asking people about auditions. One thing I like about what you're saying is you're about intentionality. Like, I'm going to intentionally learn how to do something well, right?
Mhm.
And I created Snap, the system, to run auditions because I saw that all these auditions are being run, whether it's placement audition at the end of the year for my daughter's choir, all city choir, all state band, whatever. And I said, I thought as an entrepreneur, I thought you could run this so much more efficiently, and so much cleaner and with not that complex of technology. And so that's really why I created it. I always like to ask people, how did you evaluate students back, thinking back to the middle school days?
First of all, there's formal and there's informal. I think
Yes.
as music teachers, we're informally constantly assessing. My personal philosophy is that it is more about getting the student in the right place rather than ranking them, because I don't like the
Yes.
whole aspect of competition within music education.
I think that's great. Yeah.
So
I
it
always
really
hated
is
that
more
too.
about, yeah,
Yeah.
how do we put students next to each other so that they can learn best from each other and together. I actually did most of my placement audition experience in my community band when I was the
Oh,
director of the
community.
community band,
Okay.
because you did have, in middle school you do have some, or high school or college even, you do have some variety in the skill levels of your players. But in a community band where it's a volunteer activity, it's a y'all come kind of situation, you have a very vast range of skill levels and
Right.
abilities. And so it's even more important to make sure that they're on the right spot, because I wanted, first of all, everybody to feel comfortable when they walked in the room for band practice on a Thursday night as a volunteer. This
Yeah.
was a fun time for us to practice and play music together. And we were going to sound great as an ensemble because we enjoyed it, not because I ran the Dr. Beat the whole time. Okay. So,
That's not
which
fun at all.
did not, yeah. You didn't want to have players on parts that were too challenging for them, and you didn't want them on parts that were too easy for them. So it was very important
Right.
for us to do it. That being said, when I would do those placement auditions, it was usually only in the larger sections like trumpets, trombones, stuff like that. And it
Uh-huh.
really was just to make sure that they were on a part that was going to simultaneously challenge them without triggering what we call the affective filter.
What's
Um,
the effective filter?
the affective filter is
Uh,
when we psychologically shut down from learning something because it's become too hard.
it's too much. It's too much too soon, and so you gotta. It's self defeating then at that
Yeah,
point.
it
Yeah.
triggers what we call your affective filter, where
Effective
you
filter.
just
Okay.
shut down. So going back to your audition thing, how we used to
Yeah.
do, that we would do auditions on a separate night from band practice, or we would do it like the hour before band
So you're
practice
talking
would
about
start.
the community band.
Right. We would bring each player into the room and they would just play, and we wouldn't bother giving them feedback. I think this is the worst possible educational thing to do.
Oh, this is another reason I started Snap and built it. Was my kids, and I was thinking back to my experience. How many times did I get any kind of feedback? And you put all this effort into all these auditions, but then I think of the logistics of getting it to them, and so I thought, okay, technology, the system, we could just make this happen, right? So it bothered you that they weren't getting any feedback.
Exactly, because we just
Yeah,
didn't, but when I was teaching middle school, so I always gave feedback live, and I
yeah,
realized that that was incredibly challenging, right? Because the class has to stay quiet while the student plays a solo in front of them, and then they have to hear the critique, right? Now, I was very strategic about it, made sure that any critique that I was giving could be applicable to almost anybody in the
okay,
room, right? And so
okay,
they were able to learn from each other. But if you have limited time and limited resources and limited focus in your students, right? They have a hard time sitting there
yeah.
quietly. I love that there are options for you like Snap Audition.
Yeah, we built in where you can type out or you can do audio, and then you can choose, like if you have multiple people adjudicating something, you can choose if it's shared with them. And, in an educational context, it's education, right? It's not just to have a honor group or whatever to play. It's actually to educate, and you're losing the opportunity to help everybody involved, whether they made the group or not. Thank you so much for your time, Elisa. And everybody should check out Music Teacher Guild, musicteacherguild.org. See if it's for you, and if you need mentorship, you need to continue growing and becoming a better teacher, becoming a better communicator, all kinds of different things in the music education space. Thank you, Elisa.
Well, thanks, Eric.